And I'm sure some of you have thought from time to time, I think I need to be like a man to get ahead. It's a man's world out there. And the fact of the matter is, it is a man's world. The world of work was created by men, it's been perfected by men. I myself had such a career in male dominated environments. Started off at African explosives and chemical industries. I was like the only woman on the management team. I then joined the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants on their exco, only woman. I then joined Standard Bank in their retail division, once again, the only woman on the management team. I then joined Nando's as their marketing director, once again, the only woman on the executive team, and then joined supply chain management as their marketing director. And surprise, surprise, was the only woman on the board. After that, I ventured into venture capital. I started investing in businesses, and lo and behold, a man's world. And then something interesting happened. I was called into MultiChoice to put together a program for the development of women. And I was asked to interview some of their leading ladies to see what they were doing to get ahead. And what I noticed about some of these women is they were different. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I had to put my finger on it because these women had something so powerful. And what I realized about these women is that they were very comfortable being women. And let's face it, guys, the world of today needs woman leadership more than ever before. We are inclusive, we are collaborative, we are purpose-driven. We build relationships brilliantly. We have a healthy relationship with risk. But as I said before, men have perfected the world of work. And what I noticed with these women, there were some attributes that they demonstrated that were interesting, that were fascinating. And so I came up with this concept of play to win, what women can learn from men in business. And so I wrote a book on this. This book was my little baby. It just popped out. It was so easy to write. It sold 30,000 copies. Ladies, you will notice it's very thin. My sequel, What Men Can Learn from Women in Business, is going to be a big fat volume. So I want to share a few thoughts with you from the book today. But a very important point that I want to make is I don't believe we need to be like men to get ahead. But if we can understand how they operate and combine that with the power that we bring as women, we are a compelling force in the world of work. And so let us navigate through a few of the points that I would like to highlight today. So the very first point that I want to make is that business is a game. The fact of the matter is that men and women view business very, very differently. Research has told us that many working mothers enter the world of work with a strong sense of finding purpose and meaning and emotional fulfillment. Whereas for men, it is a game. For them, you muscle into the world of business. It's a game. You're going to win some and you are going to lose some. And this comes very much from the way that we are socialized, which has impacted how we view business. So if you think about it, when young boys are growing up, they play in quite big groups. They either play sport or physical games, and they're quite aggressive with each other. It's all about, braveness, showing who can be the best. It's struggling for authority. But the fascinating thing about men is that they learn two things. One, that you can be aggressive and still be friends and have fun. But they also learn the cardinal principle of winning and losing at a very early age. Whereas if you think about young girls when we are socialized, we play in much more smaller groups. There's a lot more intimacy. And the focus of those groups is on consensus seeking. Everybody needs to be happy and, aligned and all that kind of stuff. So I will never forget, I had 4 Barbie dolls and a Ken doll. And I remember distinctly playing with my little friends, and the time with the Ken doll was allocated, and everybody had an even amount of time, and everybody was super happy, and there was no conflict. So this is what we bring to the world of work, is that we haven't got this mindset of winning and losing. We actually tend to take things quite personally, and we internalize quite a bit. So I want to give an example of business as a game. I recall when I was working with a group of women, and we were looking at a big empowerment deal. And we had some male advisors with us. And we met with this party that we were proposing to do business with. And I noticed after the meeting, I huddled with the woman, and we were looking at joint alignment, and did we think we could get on with them, and what was the culture, and what did we notice about them, which was fascinating. And then I saw the 2 men advisors, and what they were doing is they were huddled in a corner, and to them, it was an absolute game. How do we position this deal? How do we get the most out of it? How do we ensure that there's no money left on the table for these women? Now, I'm not saying that either approach is wrong or right, but it was different, and it interested me. And so what I have learned to do is every single morning when I walk into my office, I visualize a huge Monopoly board. And the reason is because I say to myself, I'm here to play. And when you have that mindset that business is a game, you take things less emotionally. Your appetite for risk increases, and believe it or not, you make faster decisions. So that is point number 1. Business is a game. The second principle that I would like to talk about is not to take it personally. What you will find often with men is that they do business and then they go and play. They'll have a drink after they've done business. They'll do big bonding or whatever. What we tend to do as women is we are really focused in on relationships. We are super good at building those relationships. But the problem is it can sometimes work against us. And let me give you some examples of why. So men are really great at compartmentalizing. There's always this joke that you can only speak to a man about one thing at one time, because that's all they can focus. They take that little box out very carefully, and they focus on what is in that box. Okay. What happens with women is often we'll have a bit of a fallout with somebody, or they'll piss us off, or we just don't want to be around them. We kind of let them go quite easily. Okay. And we often think, how can I do business with this person if I don't like this person? Whereas you will see 2 men, I guarantee you, they hate each other, can't stand each other. But for the sake of business, you would swear that they were tied to each other because they will support each other. And it's a really great lesson. And I recall Donald Trump in The Apprentice. He put it so well when he said, you have to work with people you don't like and don't like you. And it's so important to be able not to get so emotionally invested that you actually don't see the wood from the trees, and you actually don't make sound business decisions. The next point that I want to talk about is don't wait to be noticed. As women, we spend a lifetime waiting. We wait to be asked on our first date. We wait for that promotion. We wait for that marriage proposal. I'll never forget, I went with my now husband. We were not married at that time. we went to Mauritius, delicious Mauritius. Every night was more beautiful than the next. We sat on the beaches with the sun going down, the most magnificent food you have ever tasted in your whole life. I had my nails done every single day because I was sure that was the day that he was going to pop the question. Last day of Mauritius, still no proposal. Was waiting, and I was waiting, and I was waiting. No proposal. We got on the flight back to Mauritius. He's an aeronautical engineer. He said he's going to the toilet. I thought, no ways is he going to the toilet. He's going to the air hostess or to the captain, and he's going to announce over the intercom that he wants me to be his wife. And he came back to his seat, snuggled in, and said there was a long queue by the toilet. So the point that I want to make to you guys is that you just cannot keep on waiting to get noticed. And I love this quote by Seth Godin, who says the following. He says, YouTube wants you to have your own show now, but they're not going to call you. Neither is Oprah or the Today Show. It may sound harsh, but no one cares as much as you. You are the only one who's going to make things happen. No one's going to hand it to you. You don't have to wait for permission anymore. Get out there and show them. And let me tell you, ladies, we are way too modest. Way too modest. You know, somebody will give us a compliment and will say, oh, it wasn't me, it was the team. Whereas you will see your male counterparts, you know, muscling in, taking advantage. If they're in the corporate world, negotiating an increase, negotiating a promotion. But we tend to be very, very modest. And we're not good at packaging our accomplishments. We're not good at putting them out there. And I guarantee you, if you're an entrepreneur, your personal brand is integrally tied to the success of your business brand. And so the challenge I give to you is to be your own PR agent. You should not go to sleep once without thinking, what have I done to promote myself today? What have I done to package the value of my business? And to what extent are people understanding the unique difference that I'm making in the world today? The next point that I wanted to touch on is to ditch the incremental moves. And I love this quote that says, a great career is seldom reached by a ladder of small steps. What we tend to do as women in business is we're quite incremental. You know, we do little bits of this, and have we got enough cash for this? And, you know, let's go super slowly, and I can only do this when I get one more big client. And that's how we operate. We're very, very, very incremental. And the research tells us, ladies, that as we get older, we actually become more risk averse. And the reason being is because we tend to have more responsibilities on our plate. Not only do we have children, but I'm referring to Anna Paula, who spoke about how she needs to care for her mother. We have so many more people that we need to care about. So we tend to be more risk averse. But here's the interesting thing, is that you need to take these big, bold moves. I'll never forget when I was building my first business and I had a mentor. And I'm obsessed about women, so I only employ women. I've got 3 businesses and they all have women employed in them. And he said to me, and I wanted to get part-time mothers because I thought they would be good because then they've got flexibility, and I was serving society and my business, and I showed him my plan, and he looked at me rather confused. And he said, Donna, are you trying to build a business or are you playing around? And it was a big wake-up call to me. So what is that big, bold move that you need to make in your business? I am a strong believer that you need to combine good strategic play with vision. What do I mean by that? Visualization for me is an absolute must. You will, for those of you that were on the summit at the beginning, Kim Potgieter referred to it. She said, build your vision board. She's absolutely right, because you start manifesting when you have a vision board, okay? I'm not a big one on goal setting. Rather set that vision and you will start manifesting and start attracting everything that you want when it's consciously out there. I'll never forget with my now husband. Believe it or not, we've been married 24 years, so this was a good pick. But anyway, when I only started thinking about marriage and family and everything at about 32. I was too busy having fun in the corporate world. And I wanted a husband. So I picked up a book called Stepping into the Magic. Yeah, it was Jill Edwards. Anyway, I read this book and she said, set the vision of what you want. So I put 20 characteristics of what I wanted in a man. And guess what? I got him, except for one. He doesn't like the bush as much as me. But the fact is that vision combined with good strategic play is absolutely vital. Let's move to the next principle, which is the following. Ask, don't hint. Very, very, very interesting is that as women, we are not good at being forthright and asking for what we want. I'll never forget when I got married, bless my husband, every birthday, every anniversary, I got the most crazy gifts, like clocks that projected the time onto the ceiling, ice cream makers, roasting pans. I mean, hideous. Like all I wanted was diamonds, spas, and perfumes. And I thought, if he really loves me, he would know what is important to me. But it kept happening until one day I woke up and I said, my darling, I really appreciate the effort that you go for my gifts, but I would really appreciate it for any birthday or for any anniversary if there's one shop you go to, and that is Swarovski. You can buy whatever you want there. I don't care what you buy, but I will be the happiest woman in the world. And what I learned from that, and by the way, I get the most beautiful presents, he's less stressed. We tend to hint. We're not super straightforward. If you want that sale, ask for the sale. Be forthright. Don't beat around the bush to try and get to a point. And, related to this point, something that I'm very passionate about is this question of no. Often as women, we believe no means no. And I did a little social experiment with my two children. I said to my daughter, Carly, when I say no to you, what does no mean? She says, Mommy, ooh, no means no. And then I said to my son, Zach, when I say no to you, what does no mean? He says, nag more. And let me tell you how this manifested. At 16 years old, he came to me and said, I want to become a pilot. I want to fly little aeroplanes. And I said, over my dead body, are you flying little aeroplanes? So he didn't abort the mission. He just realized he hadn't pitched it properly. And so he came from another angle and started to tell me how much more safer aeroplanes were than cars. I still didn't buy that. Sorry, boy. I can't buy that. I can't have a 16-year-old up in the sky flying solo to I don't know where. So he carried on. And do you know that this carried on until he was 17 years old? Until the final negotiation was, okay, Zach, you can do this if you get 8 distinctions for matric. And I made that proviso because he's a very clever kid, but just did no work. And fortunately, he fulfilled that. But he also got his pilot's license before he got his driver's license. So the point that I want to make to you is no is a relative term. It means maybe, sometime, or not now. And often as women, when we hear no, we see it as an insult on our personal abilities. And we take it personally that we are not good enough. So we back down. And it even applies to sales, to the entrepreneurs on the call. Until somebody says, you totally get out of my face and I never want to see you again, you don't give up. In fact, some of the best sales I've got in business is when I got a no initially. And I thought, wow, challenge on. Now we're going to get you. But I'm going to pitch it differently. And I'm going to make sure that you get it. I've got to educate you more. I haven't educated you enough. So no doesn't necessarily mean no. The next point that I want to talk about is the following, is to work your network like a man. Men leverage their networks shamelessly because they know others will leverage their skills, their connections, their introductory power, and their advice. I will never, ever forget when I was a judge on entrepreneur competition at Liberty. And there was the CEO of Liberty and the CEO of Standard Bank, and I was the only woman on this judging panel. And there I was, slowly building the relationships and, finding out as much as I could. And these men were like piranha fish, honestly. Oh my gosh, you're the CEO of Liberty. I need to be introduced to ABC. Please, can you make the introduction tomorrow? Or I want to be introduced to your sales team, They were like piranha fish, shamelessly and ruthlessly asking for what they want. Another example was my husband. He's sitting on the couch one day and he needs some specialist advice. So he says, I'm going to phone this Mark Chazen guy or whatever. I said, oh, who's he? He said, no, he's a specialist in this field of business. And I'm going to phone him up for some advice. I said, what, free advice? He said, yeah, free advice. I said, oh, if he was with you at school, when have you seen him since school? He said, I haven't. I said, Dion, how can you phone him up and ask for free advice? He said, easy. Just pick up the phone and phone. And yet we know if it's a woman. If I want to connect with somebody that I haven't connected with for 6 months, I think, oh, sure, but what is she going to think? I haven't asked about the new business. I haven't asked how the family is. I haven't asked how things are going. And so I want to highlight to you the difference between how men and women network. And I thought this was a good way to illustrate it.
And well, or do we need to get tissues?
So what is the big difference between men and women? Women tend to form very, very small and deep networks where there is a lot of friendship associated in those networks. And they're very much focused on longer term needs. Whereas men tend to form bigger alliance networks, is what I call them. They're not particularly deep, but they are quite broad. And often what you will find is a man will leverage that network whenever he needs to for what he needs. And it's very much based on short-term needs. Now, ladies, I'm not saying don't build deep and meaningful relationships, and I'm not saying that networks shouldn't be reciprocal. But what I do know is that people want to help you. And sometimes with a broader alliance network and just asking, there's so much that you can get from business. So I can see my time is marching on. So I want to start to bring this all together and to share a thought with you about faking it till you are it. And there is something that says that the first step to being successful is convincing yourself that you are successful. We know this from men. Often men in a corporate environment On their first day, they will walk into the organization and see themselves as the CEO. We know as women, we wait for that 100% perfection before putting ourselves out there, before applying for stuff, before we really make a go of things. And as women, we tend to be our harshest critic. I can tell you in every coaching engagement I have with a senior exec woman, her biggest enemy is herself. And so we are often inaccurate judges of our own abilities and often underestimate what we can accomplish. And the point that I want to leave you with is you are far more powerful than what you think. Don't wait until you have all the pieces together to transform you, the you that you'd like to become. Start to see business as a game. Don't take it personally. Ditch the small incremental moves. Ask, don't hint, and work your network like a man. And those are my thoughts, Harry.
Brilliant, Donna, and such simple yet such profound insights for everybody to learn from. We don't have many men on this call, but they can even play to some of their strengths again, little did they know. And yeah, sorry to say we've got such a little bit of knowledge to share in Donna's thin book. We look forward to the big volume on what we can learn from women, because Kim said this morning, not Kim, actually, it was Carol, had a slide up that said, what can women learn from? If women can do everything men can do, then surely men should learn to do everything a woman can do. And I don't think we want to. Thank you very much. But let's start with some questions. There's one in from Yvonne. How do you handle the male egos that don't want women to receive the deserved accolades?
I use humor. Humor has been my biggest tool. So, for example, in a case like that, I'll say, please, do you honestly mean that? Or another example, when I was younger, I was always asked to make the tea or coffee and said, oh, I'd make humor. I wouldn't make a big issue of it. I'd say, oh, come on, guys. It's not the woman's role to always make the tea. You can go and make a cup of tea. So I always use humor and frivolize it a little bit, if that comes across the right way. Men have egos. Women have egos. There are lots of women in business with very big egos. I can tell you it's not only men.
So you mentioned one of the first things often when you're dealing with women and in coaching engagements or other businesses, it's women kind of undermine themselves almost. They need to understand that they're successful. What are some of the other typical things that you've seen in women that are in business that are easy to fix, that open up kind of the floodgates and bring about success quite easily?
So look, my biggest learning in business has been not to take it personally. And why I write books is because I write most what I have to learn. So there's a whole chapter on not taking it personally. Because you can tell when you take it personally, your whole physiology changes. Like I can feel I get red. I can feel my heart palpitating. I can feel like I'm going to explode. Now, what happens often as women, when we respond immediately, we are responding from the amygdala at the back of the brain, which is the part of the brain that is responsible for survival. So it's either fight, flight, or freeze. And all those responses are totally inappropriate in any relationship. So what you need to do is you need to use the power of pause for the neocortex of your brain to kick in. Now, the neocortex is the part of your brain that deals with reason. So whenever I feel like I'm emotional or I'm taking it too personally or I'm just really taking this out of context, I say, please excuse me, just need to go to the loo, just need to get some water, just excuse me for 1 minute. And I come back to center super quick. Hey, you got this totally out of perspective. Business is a game. Don't take this so personally. How are you going to play this? Okay. So that is one tip that I would give that I use today, like virtually all the time. And it's a lifesaver. You don't have to respond immediately. Like I remember with my husband in the early days when we'd occasionally have fighting, like, as women, we want it all sorted. Like, we're not going to go to sleep on a fight. Like, my gosh, leave them in their men cave, let them sort it out. And it also gives you the time. And in the morning, you have a totally different perspective.